Hi friends, it's Tiana here today, and today we're going to be sewing up the Ethel ruffle peplum blouse. This is a free pattern by Tiana's Closet. It's got a V-neck, it's got a little ruffle here at the waistline with a peplum top with this really cute gathered at the hem sleeve. It is for a woven, and I'm using this really lightweight woven I got from Hobby Lobby a few years ago. It's been on my stash. And so yeah, I'm super excited to sew it up. Let's do it together. By the way, you can find a link to this pattern in the caption below, so make sure you go ahead and grab the pattern, come back and sew it up with me. Alright, I've got all my pieces cut out. These are my two sleeves. I've got my two pieces for my ruffle under my peplum. I've got my two peplum pieces, my back, my front, and then my facing and my lining for my facing. We're going to get started by fusing the interfacing of our facing to the facing. And this will give the facing a little bit of structure, so it's not just going to like kind of fluff out and look soft and not have the nice V, especially because the fabric is really thin. I'm just using fusible interfacing, and I'm using my iron to iron it on. The pattern says to go ahead and finish your raw edges first because you're using woven, they're going to fray on you. But I'm not going to finish my raw edges first because woven fabric can tend to like warp as you're working with it, especially this thin fabric. So as I sew every seam, as I sew each seam or do everything with it, I'm going to go ahead and sew it on my sewing machine and then finish it off on my serger as well. So that way I already have my pieces sewn together, and there's less chance of them warping and coming out of shape. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you know I like to do a lot of steps at the same time. So I like to go ahead and prep everything together first and then head over to my sewing machine and actually sew it. With that being said, we're going to prep our neck facing by grabbing the front and the back and sewing here at the shoulder seams. Once I sew those shoulder seams, I'm also going to go ahead on my serger and finish off the raw edges of the whole outside of the facing. You can do this on your sewing machine, or you can also do it on your, you can do it on your serger, or you can do it on your sewing machine using a zigzag stitch really close to the edge. I'm also going to go ahead and do my sleeves, so I'm going to fold them right sides together and sew up the edge on the side seam. This sleeve is going to be sewn inset, which means that it's going to get sewn, once it's sewn together, then it's going to go into the bodice, so it can be put together now ahead of time. What other thing we're putting together is our bodice. We're going to grab our bodice back and we're going to face it right side up on my board, and I'm going to grab my bodice front and I'm going to face it right side down right on top of it, right sides facing together, and then we're going to sew our shoulder seams and our side seams. So right sides together, shoulder seams and side seams. Alright, another thing I'm going to put together is the ruffle and the peplum. The peplums, I'm going to grab them both and I'm going to sew them at the two raw edges. I'm going to match them up, right sides together, and sew those up. And the same thing with that little ruffle. Now, you can obviously do every single one of these steps one at a time, but I just find that it's more time saving for me if I just prep them all and then head over to my machine, sew them all, and then come back and put them all together. I'm going to go to my machine, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a straight stitch on my sewing machine first, and then I'm going to move on to my serger and I'm going to do a finishing stitch. So I'm just going to do a regular stitch on my serger to finish off those edges so that my fabric's not going to fray on me. And if you don't have a serger, that's okay. You can just use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine close to the edge. So your seam allowance, you're going to sew out your seam allowance with your straight stitch, and then right beside your seam allowance towards the edge, go ahead and put a zigzag stitch there so your fabric's not going to just fray off as you wear it. So I somehow did not record myself serging all the edges on the video, but I serged all the edges and the bottom of the facing. I also went ahead and serged the bottom of the peplum ruffle because when I go to hem, I'm just going to fold it and top stitch it to hem. But if you don't want that serge edge to show, you can just fold it once and then fold it again to hem, or you can do a rolled edge, however you want to do it. But I just wanted to finish that at that bottom and then fold up. So that's how I'm gonna hem the bottom of the blouse. Since the bottom of the sleeve is basically going to be hemmed and then encasing the elastic inside of the hem, I'm gonna go ahead and just serge the bottom of the sleeve as well. But again, you could do fold 1/4 inch and then fold again. It's up to you how you wanna finish that off. All right, now everything is prepped and we can start piecing things together. I've got my sleeve. So hold on, let me set these things aside. I'm really not going exactly by the order of the tutorial because I'm changing a couple of things and doing it my way, how I like to sew things. So what I'm gonna do first is, I don't really know, like I read the tutorial and it doesn't really explain this very well about the little ruffle here. But what I'm assuming, because I don't want to hem all the way around, hem this ruffle all the way around, I'm gonna fold it in half and that's gonna be my ruffle. It's gonna be like a little ruffle folded in half, and I really do think, looking at the pictures, that's what they meant to do. So I'm gonna grab this whole ruffle, I'm gonna fold it in half lengthwise, and I'm gonna put in a basting stitch, and that basting stitch is going to do two things. It's gonna make sure that I can sew it together here, so it's gonna stay together. And it's also, I'm gonna use that basting stitch to pull and gather this ruffle to fit my, my peplum bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half and sew it with a basting stitch. All right, so there's that. And then I'm also going to go ahead and hem the bottom of my peplum about 1/2 inch. I'm also going to hem the bottom of my sleeve, but I'm going to leave a little gap, maybe like 2 inch wide, where I'm not gonna sew it closed, where I'm going to insert my elastic to blouse my hem. All right, let's go sew all that. Don't forget to leave your gap to insert the elastic. All right, I'm gonna lengthen the stitch. No, that's the tension. Lengthen the stitch, and I am going to add a little bit to the tension so that it kind of gathers my ruffle a tiny bit. I set my tension at about a 5.5, and my stitch length is a 4. And then make sure to leave a long tail at the end. So I upped my tension to a 5.5, and it gathered it pretty much the perfect width to go against my peplum. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just gonna match up the top edge of the whole thing, and we're gonna go over to my sewing machine and baste it on. Again, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna baste it on, and then I'm gonna leave the tension up a little bit because this is gonna have to gather the width of the bodice to attach to the bodice. So it's not like a whole bunch of gathering, but it is some gathering, and this, just doing that, gathers it so evenly and nicely that I'm like, you know what, why not? So actually I'm gonna match up the side seams first so that those match up, and then I'm gonna go ahead and match it all the way around. So I'm gonna go match all that up, and then I'm also going to grab my sleeve and my elastic, and I'm gonna use a safety pin, probably a smaller one, and I'm gonna fit that elastic through the gap that I left. Once I get it all the way through, we're gonna grab those two ends, match them up, and sew them on my sewing machine. Then I'm gonna do the same for the other sleeve. And then for the neckline, we can go ahead and attach our facing. So we're gonna attach it right sides together. So here's my bodice right side out. Match up that V-neck here. Make sure when you come to this point, you go down, stop right at the corner, pivot, go back up when you're sewing it. Match the shoulder seams. All right, let's go do that. When we come back, we'll attach the peplum to the bodice and insert the sleeve and attach those, understitch the neckline, and we'll be done. Okay, my machine is still set to the basting stitch, and it is still set to, the tension is still up a little bit. So let's sew these together. Leave a long stitch together. Putting my tension back and my stitch length back. Probably the hardest part is stitching the elastic together, but it's done. And then once it's stitched together, we can fit it in and top stitch that down. I'm gonna start in the back with my facing and go down to that point. Put my needle down, lift up my foot, pivot the other way. All right, so now what we gotta do is we're gonna grab this bodice here where the facing is at the V-neck and cut all the way down to the V point. Don't cut your thread, just up to the thread. And we can also grab pinking shears, and grab those, and trim down the extra allowance very carefully. Now you should be able to flip this under and it will give you a nice V-neck here. Now, to avoid this from flipping out, you want to do what is called understitching. And I'll show you here. What that means is sewing this seam allowance to the facing. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and push this seam allowance over to the facing and top stitch it down real quickly. So I'm going to do that. While I'm over there, I'm also, you know what? Let's just do that first and then come back to attach everything else, because we'll just have to attach the sleeves and attach the skirt and we'll be done. So kind of open it and push it towards the facing. All right, now that that's done, we can flip that over and see how much nicer it just lays. And of course, it will lay much nicer once I steam it, but that makes it lay nice and flat there. I'm gonna steam this so it'll be nice, the V there, but you can see right here how nice that looks on the inside. It's top stitched down. Now what we're going to do is I'm gonna mark my half of my bodice, front and back. So I'm matching those side seams. I'm going to the front and the back and marking. I'm also going to mark the half of my peplum. So matching the side seams and going to the front and then to the back. And then I'm going to find the start of that basting stitch so that I can gather it to fit. Once you've got it gathered, I'm gonna match up those quarter points. Actually, I'm gonna match them up right now. Right sides together, match up the quarter points, and then we're gonna attach. I'm gonna do another basting stitch a little bit farther down than my ruffle because my ruffle is not allowing my basting stitch to gather. So I'm gonna do a basting stitch a little bit farther down from my ruffle to bring in my basting, to bring in my gatherings a little bit, because I want to gather it first. I don't want to try to do it without gathering all the way. So that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll come back and attach it. But yeah, so I'm just going to do that real quick. Probably not going to even show it on the video. But after I do that, I'm going to grab my sleeves and the bodice facing, actually I'm going to turn my bodice wrong side out. And I'm going to fit my sleeve, which is right side out, and match up my top notch and my back notches. So fit it into my bodice. So it's right sides together, my bodice and my sleeve. Match up the top, match up the armpit seam. And while I'm doing another basting stitch, gathering stitch on my bodice, I can go ahead and attach this sleeve. I'm going to attach it by a straight stitch first and then serge the raw edge so it's not going to fray on me. So I'll go ahead and gather to fit now that I added that second row basting stitches, and we'll sew together and we'll be done. Make sure your ruffle is tucked under so it's not going to flip up and get caught as you're sewing them together. Now, before I go finish that off on my serger, I'm gonna open it up and look all the way around to make sure my ruffle didn't get caught in a weird way or anything like that, and that all of them caught, that it looks good. And then I'm gonna head over there to the serger and finish it off. It looks good. So let's finish it off and then I can try it on and show you what it looks like. All right, friends, we are done with this beautiful sew. It turned out so cute. I just love it. I love the little gathers here, the little ruffle here. The sleeves are so beautiful. About the v-neck, I'm not a huge fan of a v-neck on me, but I think it looks very cute. It's very modest V, so it goes pretty high. So I have no issues there. But I think next time I make it, I might omit the V and do a crew neck instead. I'm not sure, but I think this is super, super cute. I am maybe between a size medium and large, and I went with the medium size because I was a little worried. It is a little bit oversized here, so I didn't want it to be huge on me. I think it fits pretty well. I have good range of motion. It fits right at the shoulders where it should, and everything looks really good. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please comment, like, share, subscribe if you haven't. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's any patterns that you're like, oh, I wish you would sew this up. Here's a free pattern I've been meaning to sew up and I just haven't. Will you sew it with me? And then I'll make sure to give it a try. Also, if you're not following me on Instagram yet, make sure you go follow me on Instagram, where I do a lot of behind the scenes and sews, and I do a lot of polls and stuff like that for questions and whatnot. So come check me out there. Anyway, go grab this pattern, come sew it up with me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!